I still can't wrap my head around it. I genuinely cannot believe how every single player in this game managed to fumble the biggest opportunity of their lives, and I cannot believe how every last one of them is now standing on the edge of a payment they will never recover from. This whole rap circus has had years, actual years, to see the writing on the wall, and yet here we are, and not one of these frauds masquerading as legends is remotely prepared for the tidal wave that is about to swallow them whole. Something apocalyptic is loading right now in the world of hip-hop, and if you are ready to see the final piece slide into place for Kendrick Lamar's monumental return, if you are ready to see what his last quiet warning actually meant, then buckle in, because we have an ocean of information to unpack today. And listen, if you already sense that Kendrick Lamar's next album is going to be a stone-cold, generation-defining classic, if you already suspect that Kendrick Lamar is about to publicly humiliate this parade of hustlers, phonies, and marionettes calling themselves rappers, then do me a favor and smash that like button and subscribe, because you have landed exactly where you need to be. Because wow, we have a mountain of terrain to cover today. From the cardboard carnival that hip-hop has degenerated into, or at least the sad majority of it, to layers upon layers being pulled back that expose a truly terrifying brilliance underneath Kendrick Lamar's movements, to release dates now barreling toward us that are going to make an entire generation of failed rappers unravel in real time. Kendrick Lamar has been patiently waiting for this exact chapter to arrive, because everything, and I do mean every single thread, has fallen into place precisely how Kendrick Lamar mapped it out. Look at the lineage that Kendrick Lamar has quietly untangled. From that broken clown Drake, all the way through the 21 Savage collapse, through the Big Mac Act meltdown, through countless other casualties, right up to what we are witnessing now with the game combusting live on the internet. And with the game essentially detonating his own credibility over Kendrick Lamar, the hip-hop press machine cannot stop weeping about him from every direction imaginable, and every panel show, every podcast, every corner of hip-hop Twitter is now stuck in a doom loop, replaying the same footage, recycling the same takes, dragging the same corpses out for one more autopsy, while Kendrick Lamar sits above the noise, untouched, unbothered, and completely undefeated. And with fresh forensic details now bubbling up, like the fact that the game personally escorted Drake into Compton on June 16, 2016 to shoot that 100 music video, a moment which many now believe permanently corroded the relationship between Kendrick Lamar and the game and quietly rewired hip-hop forever. Well, that puts an entirely new coat of paint on how deeply Kendrick Lamar was reading the room. And all of this is essential to what we are discussing, because Kendrick Lamar has actually done it. I mean, Kendrick Lamar has cracked it wide open. Kendrick Lamar has not just hit some ordinary marker of greatness that legends before him hit, not just cleared some traditional benchmark of artistic dominance. No, and this is the part that is going to sting for every troll, every owl, every hater, every clown-adjacent commentator in this entire industry. Kendrick Lamar has ascended into the single most powerful rapper who has ever walked this earth. And here is the twist you were not expecting: you personally have contributed to that ascension. So own it, respect it, and move with it, because there is no rewriting this chapter now. There is no timeline where you get to erase your fingerprints from this coronation. Every stream you gave him, every argument you had on his behalf, every take you defended in the comments, every playlist you slid him into, all of that stitched itself into the tapestry of the empire Kendrick Lamar is now standing on top of. While Kendrick Lamar has said essentially nothing all year, while Kendrick Lamar has practically vanished from public performance for an entire calendar cycle, the discourse, the culture, the trolls, the podcasters, the grifters, every last soul with a microphone or a keyboard, they are all completely, hopelessly consumed with Kendrick Lamar. They are so consumed with Kendrick Lamar that 3 back-to-back Drake albums arrived and evaporated without leaving a real dent, because everybody kept looping back to bar references from a Kendrick Lamar diss that dropped more than 2 years ago. Kendrick Lamar is dominating conversation more than a J. Cole album that was hyped up for the better part of a decade, more than a J. Cole tour that could not shatter the zeitgeist the way his older work once did. And even the faintest whisper of Kendrick Lamar's name is casting a longer shadow than career-defining stadium stops from Kanye. None of the biggest stars in this game are moving the needle the way Kendrick Lamar is moving it while doing nothing. And the terrifying reality is that all of this was engineered from day one. Think about that. Absorb that. This is a man dominating an entire industry from a distance so far away that most of these rappers cannot even see him on the horizon anymore, and yet Kendrick Lamar is still the sun the entire genre is rotating around. Step back and look at what is unfolding here, because I know this is hard for a lot of people to swallow, but this is exactly the destination Kendrick Lamar was steering toward the entire time. In an art form, a business, and a culture that has been shaped and immortalized by singular, seismic moments, in an era where most artists cannot even conjure a mediocre one, Kendrick Lamar is not just the only living force still delivering Hall of Fame moments on demand. Kendrick Lamar has become the moment itself. Kendrick Lamar has become the entire event around which the genre now orbits. And right now, while Kendrick Lamar's brilliance and the strange psychology of his silence is being dissected by both his most devoted supporters and his most humiliated detractors, watching something as neighborhood-specific as the game situation unravel, watching the layers keep peeling back, watching the chaos ripple through so many corners of hip-hop, this genuinely feels like the closing act of Kendrick Lamar sitting back and watching the entire dinner party collapse under its own weight. From Atlanta to Compton, Kendrick Lamar has let every rival exhaust themselves, drain their reservoirs, and essentially decompose their own careers. And now, with the load-bearing scaffolding of the last 15 years of hip-hop rotting from the inside, the casualty list is staggering. So many artists have stepped to Kendrick Lamar and effectively wrecked their own runs, or been exposed as complete embarrassments. That casualty ledger stretches from Lil Baby all the way to the game. Kendrick Lamar has every single one of them exactly where he wants them, and Kendrick Lamar is probably sitting somewhere right now enjoying a peaceful afternoon while the rest of the industry loses its mind. And every one of these figures has had every opportunity to just stop, back away, and let normalcy return. But they refuse. They refuse to concede Kendrick Lamar's greatness. They refuse to bow out gracefully. They refuse to abandon the delusion, and they keep grasping at straws trying to invent new ways to knock Kendrick Lamar off the throne. And every single attempt lands exactly the same way, in embarrassment, in silence, in another chunk of their own credibility disintegrating into the wind, while Kendrick Lamar's stock keeps climbing higher without him having to speak a single syllable on record. Just look at Drake for a second. The most magnetic, most discussed segments of his recent album, sections that have already come and gone from the cycle, were all orbiting Kendrick Lamar and the crater Kendrick Lamar left in the culture. And from a parade of other rappers, 21 Savage, Young Thug obviously, alongside a mainstay like Lil Baby, all the tastemakers who defined the late 2010s and early 2020s, none of them can accept the new order. But Kendrick Lamar's words have not just proven true, Kendrick Lamar's words have become the actual obituary text stamped onto the tail end of their runs, replacing whatever cultural respect they had left in this space. And now, with somebody like the game losing his composure completely, all while Kendrick Lamar remains ghost quiet, the brutal truth is that their chapter is sealed shut. The game itself is dried up, the lane has been swept clean, and Kendrick Lamar is running hip-hop from the star-level, narrative-level pinnacle that nobody can even approach. There are no contenders left standing at his elevation. There is no realistic challenger currently active in the mainstream who can match his ceiling, his catalog, his cultural weight, and his tactical patience simultaneously. That equation simply does not exist right now, and that is why every conversation keeps circling back to Kendrick Lamar no matter where it starts. And what is the most terrifying element of that for every one of these people who insist on dragging this out? The next journey is beginning right now. That next journey is starting this month with a song releasing at the end of it. It is called How to Pray, produced with DJ Dahi, and it is landing on Kendrick Lamar's next album, which arrives on August 28th. And listen, if you think this record does not represent Kendrick Lamar making the most spectacular return of his career, in tandem with one of his oldest, closest collaborators, then you have not been paying attention to a single moment of the last 5 years. There is only one real question worth asking about this record. With a track like this on the horizon, with the snippet we have already been fed, with credible industry insiders whispering that the full album is themed around boxing, what is Kendrick Lamar actually building here? What is Kendrick Lamar actually reaching for? What is the shape of the doctrine Kendrick Lamar is about to press into the concrete of this genre? We have gotten a small taste of How to Pray. This track sounds noticeably smoother than the sonic register Kendrick Lamar has been operating in lately. This track sits closer to Luther than to Like That. And I believe every last detail, from the title of the track, to the choice of feature, to the way Kendrick Lamar is now assembling a full pipeline pointing toward a much larger statement, all of it is deliberate. Every element is engineered from day one. And this is telling us so much more than any of these hustlers or media clowns will ever be capable of admitting. Because when you line up Good Flirt with Baby Keem next to How to Pray, and you actually study them, what do these songs share? They project an image of a man completely at peace. They project an image of a man having genuine fun. While every other corner of the culture is in complete disarray over Kendrick Lamar's shadow, what is Kendrick Lamar continuing to do? Kendrick Lamar told us directly. Kendrick Lamar is just sitting here smiling. And that detail is going to be the master key here, a key we probably will not fully understand until Kendrick Lamar drops the album into our hands. But if you couple that with the reports about the boxing-themed concept, there is a phenomenal power play brewing beneath the surface. Something is arriving that is going to be terrifying, even though Kendrick Lamar himself sounds happier and more centered than at any point in his career. And I strongly suspect this boxing album, especially given the caliber of collaborators Kendrick Lamar tends to align with, people like Ryan Coogler when Kendrick Lamar built out the Black Panther soundtrack, is going to carry serious Creed and Rocky DNA folded into it. While Kendrick Lamar might position himself as a Terrence Crawford figure, or a Mike Tyson archetype, or some hybrid warrior, the emotional heart of this project is going to lean into that Creed lineage. That means layers of resilience, layers of personality, layers of pure heart baked into the identity of this warrior we are about to meet. And the deeper I sit with this Kendrick Lamar boxing concept and everything the reports around it are hinting at, the more the entire Creed framework starts to feel not just possible but genuinely inevitable. Because think about how Kendrick Lamar structures his storytelling. Think about how Kendrick Lamar lays out breadcrumbs. Remember on Squabble Up when Kendrick Lamar said, and I quote, "I got hits, I got bucks, I got new paper cuts." And what happened 2 years later? We discovered that there is a fresh new signee in PG Lang joining Kendrick Lamar and Baby Keem, a new artist named Imani, whose debut album is titled Paper Cut. That is the level of storyteller Kendrick Lamar is. That is how far in advance Kendrick Lamar plants his flags. And if Kendrick Lamar goes onto the Good Flirt track with Baby Keem and says, "Where you at with it, at the house watching Sinners," then Kendrick Lamar is watching Coogler films, Kendrick Lamar is watching Michael B. Jordan films, and everybody knows what Michael B. Jordan just accomplished with that Oscar-worthy performance he was celebrated for. Listen to what I am saying here. What other projects have those two men worked on together? What is Kendrick Lamar currently constructing in his creative lab right now? What is the reported concept spilling out of industry circles? And what has Kendrick Lamar personally alluded to across the past year? Whether it was on Euphoria talking openly about being a fighter, or the Grammy stage where Kendrick Lamar literally wore hand wraps folded into the sleeves of his suit, this is not coincidence, this is choreography. All of these signals matter, and every one of them is about to snap into a picture nobody else has been able to draw. The two things you truly need to lock in on are this. Number 1, this boxing concept, and specifically the Creed lineage inside of it, which grows more plausible by the day. Number 2, the fact that Kendrick Lamar is smiling through a full-blown cultural earthquake that carries his name on every seismograph, an earthquake fed by media hustlers, phonies, marionettes, and every failed rapper who needs a scapegoat for their own irrelevance. And here comes the take that is going to detonate in the comments, because most people are not emotionally prepared for it. With this next Kendrick Lamar album, with this next act of Kendrick Lamar's career, we are barreling straight toward what will become the single most powerful statement ever delivered in the history of this culture, this genre, this art form, this business, from any one artist that has ever picked up a microphone. And if that sounds excessive, if you are still stuck in denial, if you are still feeding the delusion that every enemy of Kendrick Lamar is pushing, then brace yourself, because it is only going to intensify. Because if Kendrick Lamar has not officially uttered a single lyric yet, and the entire ecosystem is already this violently active, if every other camp is essentially frozen in place waiting on him, and if the last 12 months of major albums from big-name artists have proven that Kendrick Lamar is basically the only living rapper, alongside maybe Jay-Z and a small handful of others, still capable of producing landscape-shifting, era-defining, culture-quaking artistic events, then the next Kendrick Lamar release is going to be catastrophic for anyone standing across from him. So if you are still not fully on the Kendrick Lamar wave, or if you are still trying to sell yourself on the fantasy that Kendrick Lamar is some kind of fraud, I recommend switching sides right now, because once this album drops and Kendrick Lamar towers over the mainstream rap landscape, which has genuinely become a joke from a star and pop culture perspective, the numbers are not going to spare anybody. And I mean anybody standing opposite of Kendrick Lamar. There is no soft landing coming. There is no rebrand strong enough. There is no PR machine deep enough. Kendrick Lamar has already collapsed the field, and the closer we creep to August 28th, the harder that collapse is going to reverberate through every single household in hip-hop. This is what happens when the culture's most patient architect finally decides the blueprint is ready to be unveiled. And step back for a second, because there is something almost cinematic about how Kendrick Lamar has managed the timing of all of this. Consider how Kendrick Lamar allowed the entire festival year to pass with barely a whisper. Consider how Kendrick Lamar refused to feed the news cycle even when the news cycle was screaming his name from every corner. Consider how Kendrick Lamar let the game unravel without lifting a finger to respond. Consider how Kendrick Lamar allowed the Drake camp to keep chasing shadows across 3 separate album cycles. Kendrick Lamar understood that silence would eventually become the loudest instrument in the room, and Kendrick Lamar orchestrated that silence like a maestro. There is no other artist alive with the psychological patience to run this playbook. There is no other artist alive who could turn absence into gravity. And that is exactly why the return, when it lands, is going to reshape the ceiling of what a rap release can even mean. And zoom in on the boxing concept for one more beat, because there is a subtle detail that most of the hip-hop press has completely missed. Boxing, as a metaphor, is the perfect vessel for Kendrick Lamar right now. Boxing is 1 against 1. Boxing is preparation, discipline, isolation, then explosive execution. Boxing is silence, then thunder. Boxing is the underdog rising, the veteran refusing to fall, the champion defending a legacy nobody was supposed to inherit. Every single one of those themes maps directly onto where Kendrick Lamar sits inside this moment. And when you layer the Creed inheritance on top of it, the passing of a torch from a father figure to a son figure, that becomes an even more devastating narrative frame. Because Kendrick Lamar is quietly positioning himself as both the champion and the inheritor, both the veteran and the successor, both the fighter and the strategist behind the fighter. That is not the framing of an artist releasing another album. That is the framing of an artist releasing a doctrine. And this is why every enemy of Kendrick Lamar is going to look even smaller by the time August 28th arrives. Because the game cannot compete with a doctrine. Drake cannot compete with a doctrine. Lil Baby, Young Thug, 21 Savage, the entire recycled cast of has-beens, none of them can compete with a doctrine. They can compete with songs. They can compete with singles. They can compete with hype cycles. But they cannot compete with an entire mythological framework that Kendrick Lamar has been quietly cementing for years. And that is the wild reality every one of them is about to wake up to. That is the horizon they have been avoiding, the mirror they have refused to look into. Kendrick Lamar has not just outclassed them, Kendrick Lamar has redefined the arena they thought they were competing in. And let me tell you something else that people are sleeping on. The How to Pray title itself is layered. Prayer, in the Kendrick Lamar universe, has always signaled a spiritual pivot point. Think about the recurring religious imagery across Damn. Think about the closing framework of Mr. Morale. Think about the way Kendrick Lamar consistently frames his craft as spiritual warfare. To open the next album with a song called How to Pray is to signal that the listener is about to be inducted into something ceremonial. Something purifying. Something that separates the believers from the pretenders. And with DJ Dahi manning the production, one of Kendrick Lamar's most trusted architects going all the way back to Money Trees, the sonic vocabulary of this album is going to feel like a homecoming and a coronation stitched into the same fabric. And here is where the horizon really widens. Because Kendrick Lamar is not just returning as a rapper. Kendrick Lamar is returning as a cultural weather system. Every headline, every trending topic, every hip-hop podcast conversation is about to be sucked into the orbit of this rollout. And Kendrick Lamar will not need to say anything about any of them. Kendrick Lamar will simply release the music, wear the imagery, book the visuals, and let the culture do what it always does when a true generational voice reasserts itself. It will fall in line. It will drop everything else. It will make room. And every rapper who has been trying to keep his name relevant by riding the outer edge of the Kendrick Lamar conversation is about to discover that outer edge just became the void. Because the second the album drops, the outer edge no longer exists. There is only the center, and Kendrick Lamar is the center. And the ripple effects are going to be even wilder than the album itself. Watch what happens to streaming. Watch what happens to the Billboard cycle. Watch what happens to the Grammy conversation for next year, because the Grammy conversation for next year is already effectively locked. Watch what happens to the PG Lang machine, because PG Lang is about to become the most important creative company in the culture. Watch what happens to Baby Keem's next moves, because Baby Keem is now sitting in the passenger seat of the most powerful vehicle in rap. Watch what happens to every artist who tried to angle themselves as an alternative to Kendrick Lamar, because the alternative slot is about to evaporate. Every second between now and August 28th is going to feel like a countdown to the biggest recalibration hip-hop has experienced in a decade. And I want you to really internalize this next part, because most people are still refusing to see it. Kendrick Lamar has done the impossible in this era. Kendrick Lamar has made silence louder than any album rollout. Kendrick Lamar has made absence more magnetic than presence. Kendrick Lamar has made rumor and speculation more powerful than any of the actual music his competitors have released. And that is a level of cultural mastery that we, as fans, as observers, as historians of this genre, may not see again in our lifetime. Because to pull that off, you have to be a specific kind of artist. You have to be a specific kind of thinker. You have to understand the psychology of the audience, the mechanics of the media, and the tempo of the culture all at once. And Kendrick Lamar has demonstrated command over every single one of those pillars. And take a moment to look at how Kendrick Lamar has quietly rewired the machinery of celebrity itself. Because most of these rappers, and I say this with the exact contempt it deserves, they built their careers off of visibility, off of constantly feeding the beast, off of never letting the audience forget them for even a week. And that is the trap. That is the exact cage Kendrick Lamar refused to step into. Kendrick Lamar figured out something none of these hustlers, phonies, and marionettes ever could. Kendrick Lamar figured out that the audience remembers greatness on a completely different clock than the audience remembers noise. Noise fades in a news cycle. Greatness compounds across generations. And Kendrick Lamar has been quietly compounding while everybody else has been furiously trending. That is why Kendrick Lamar can disappear for months and reappear at the top of the mountain, while these other guys drop 3 albums a year and still cannot buy their way into the conversation Kendrick Lamar owns rent-free. And zoom out even further, because there is another layer of this that almost nobody is discussing. Kendrick Lamar has effectively locked in a generational sweep in hip-hop that we have not seen since the peak Jay-Z era. Kendrick Lamar has the critical respect. Kendrick Lamar has the commercial ceiling. Kendrick Lamar has the Grammys. Kendrick Lamar has the Pulitzer. Kendrick Lamar has the Super Bowl halftime under his belt already. Kendrick Lamar has the biggest single of his career sitting in the culture like a monument. Kendrick Lamar has the diss track that ended a rival's decade. Kendrick Lamar has the tour behind him and a global fanbase in front of him. That is not a career profile. That is a career fortress. That is the kind of resume you only get to build once every 20 years, and Kendrick Lamar is about to add a boxing-themed magnum opus on top of it. What exactly are these other rappers supposed to do about that? What exactly is the counter-move? Because I have looked at this from every angle, and I do not see one. And step inside the psychological gymnasium Kendrick Lamar has been training in for the past year, because that is the only frame that really unlocks what is happening. Every artist in this era has been publicly reacting. Publicly ranting. Publicly begging for attention. Publicly recording responses to imaginary slights. Meanwhile, Kendrick Lamar has been operating like a professional fighter deep in a training camp. No press. No sparring in public. No sharing of the game plan. Just body work, film study, footwork, and preparation. And that is exactly why the outcome is already decided. Anyone who has ever watched a real championship-level boxing match knows that the fight is usually 1 week before the bell rings, decided in the private grind that nobody was allowed to see. And Kendrick Lamar has been running that private grind at a level none of these other rappers can even imagine, let alone replicate. And now think about how the framing extends outward, because the boxing metaphor is not only about the fight itself. It is also about the crowd around the fight. It is about the promoters, the analysts, the doubters, the loyalists, the trainers whispering in the corner. Kendrick Lamar has quietly assembled the most formidable corner in modern hip-hop. DJ Dahi in his ear on the production side. Baby Keem in his ear on the family side. Dave Free steering the visual empire through PG Lang. Kugler adjacent to the cinematic vocabulary. Whitney Alford holding the personal foundation steady. That is a corner nobody can compete with. That is not just a support system, that is an entire cinematic universe that has been built with the same patience and intentionality that the music itself is being built with. And when the bell rings on August 28th, that corner is going to be visible in every note, every lyric, every visual, every rollout beat. And you know what makes this whole moment even more surgical? Kendrick Lamar is not just letting the boxing metaphor sit as a marketing angle. Kendrick Lamar is embedding it into the way he moves in real life. The hand wraps on the Grammys were not a costume choice. The Euphoria fighter references were not throwaway bars. The PG Lang aesthetic has been leaning increasingly into disciplined, athletic, warrior-coded imagery for months. Every visual we have seen from the Kendrick Lamar camp has been prepping the audience for the doctrine that is about to land. And most of the media completely missed it, because most of the media is too busy chasing whatever failed rapper cried on a podcast that week to actually study the man who is quietly building the biggest album cycle of the decade. That negligence, that lazy analysis, that recycled contempt for anything that requires actual attention, is exactly why the media is going to look ridiculous when the album lands and the entire narrative snaps into place at once. And the deeper truth is that this entire moment, from the How to Pray reveal, to the boxing concept, to the Creed lineage, to the smiling silence, to the Grammy hand wraps, to the Euphoria fighter lyrics, to the PG Lang expansion, to the collapsed careers of every rival, is just the setup. The real explosion is August 28th. The real detonation is the album itself. And after that album lands, hip-hop will not be measured the same way. Rankings will not be discussed the same way. Legacy conversations will be rewritten in real time. And every artist currently trying to convince themselves that they can still catch Kendrick Lamar is about to discover that Kendrick Lamar has already lapped them so many times that they are functionally running a different race. And think about the emotional weather forecast for the days after this album drops. Think about how the podcast circuit is going to have to publicly recalibrate every prior ranking they ever put out. Think about how the same media grifters who spent months pretending Kendrick Lamar was overrated are going to have to pivot mid-sentence to survive. Think about how the same failed rappers who cosplayed as challengers are going to have to swallow the fact that Kendrick Lamar never even needed to acknowledge them. Think about how the algorithm itself is going to bend around the release, because every playlist, every recommendation, every trending page is going to be a Kendrick Lamar corridor for weeks on end. This is the shape of a genuine cultural takeover. This is what it looks like when an artist stops competing inside the game and starts rewriting the rulebook the game is played by. And then think one more step ahead, because there is a stage beyond even the album itself. There is the tour that will follow. There is the visual companion that will follow. There is the PG Lang film footprint that has been quietly expanding. There is the merchandise and fashion play that has been rumored for months. There is the next Baby Keem chapter that is already being staged in the wings. There is the Imani rollout that will keep the fire burning long after the album cycle has peaked. Kendrick Lamar is not just about to release a project, Kendrick Lamar is about to release an entire ecosystem, and every one of these frauds masquerading as legends is going to be forced to watch that ecosystem swallow the culture in real time, while their own catalogs collect dust on the algorithm's back shelf. That is the future being written right now, and the ink is drying quickly. And let me leave you with one more thought that I want you to sit with, because I think this is the frame that unlocks the entire endgame. Kendrick Lamar has essentially reduced every peer in modern hip-hop to a supporting character in his own biography. Think about how bizarre that actually is. Think about how unprecedented that actually is. Because normally, in any given era, you get 3 or 4 artists sharing the throne, 3 or 4 artists holding down parallel legacies, 3 or 4 artists you can argue about at a barbershop for hours. But right now, there is Kendrick Lamar, and there is everybody else, and the gap between those two categories is genuinely embarrassing for the people occupying the second category. And the wild part is that gap is about to get wider. Because when this album lands, when the boxing doctrine gets pressed into the culture, when the Creed lineage becomes canon, when How to Pray becomes the sonic template of a new era, the runway between Kendrick Lamar and everyone else is going to stretch into a distance that cannot be closed in a single career cycle. Kendrick Lamar is essentially building a legacy fortress that the next generation is going to have to climb for decades just to catch a glimpse of. And the crazy thing is, Kendrick Lamar is doing all of it while smiling. All of it while at peace. All of it while surrounded by the people he loves. All of it while making his enemies exhaust themselves into oblivion. That is not a rapper. That is a phenomenon. That is not a career. That is a doctrine. And that doctrine lands on August 28th. So look, if you have hung with me this deep into the video, welcome back into the fold. I hope you missed these conversations. I hope you missed digging into the mechanics of the culture at this level. Because this is one of those rare stretches when we get to watch history document itself in real time. This is one of those rare stretches when the biggest artist in the culture is not just making music, but rewriting the actual architecture of what it means to be the biggest artist in the culture. And I am beyond hyped to be walking this stretch with you. I am beyond ready to see how the next few weeks unfold, because everything, and I mean every last thread, is now pointing toward a Kendrick Lamar chapter that is going to be studied, dissected, and referenced for the next 20 years minimum. So tell me your thoughts down in the comments below. What do you make of How to Pray? What do you make of DJ Dahi returning to the fold in this specific way? What do you make of the boxing concept, the Creed lineage, the smiling silence, and the way Kendrick Lamar has essentially reduced the game situation to background noise while never uttering a syllable? What do you make of the fact that every rival in this game has been given every possible off-ramp and yet keep sprinting deeper into their own irrelevance? Drop it in the comments, because I want to see how the tribe is processing this one. And if you enjoyed this breakdown, if this analysis hit the way you needed it to hit, then please, do me the honor of leaving a like, subscribing to the channel, sharing this out to a friend who still needs the Kendrick Lamar wake-up call, and hyping this video up in any way you can, because it genuinely, seriously helps push these conversations to the wider hip-hop audience that needs to hear them. And if you cannot wait to see what comes next, if you cannot wait to see how this Kendrick Lamar arc continues to consume the culture, if you cannot wait to see which failed rapper cracks under the pressure next, if you cannot wait to see what the next signal from the PG Lang camp reveals, well, I have another breakdown queued up for you right now on your end screen. Tap into it, keep the conversation flowing, and stay locked in, because between now and August 28th, this landscape is going to shift 10 more times, and I promise you, we are going to be here for every single tremor. This is the era. This is the moment. This is the doctrine landing. And Kendrick Lamar is holding the entire genre in the palm of his hand. And one final piece of context before we close the book on this chapter, because I want you walking away from this video with a razor-sharp understanding of the stakes. What Kendrick Lamar is engineering right now is not a comeback. It is not a rebrand. It is not a reset. It is a coronation that has been quietly staged for years, and the coronation is arriving in the shape of a boxing-themed cinematic album that carries How to Pray as its opening prayer and DJ Dahi as its architect. Every rival is already defeated. Every doubter is already outnumbered. Every media grifter is already exposed. All that is left is the album itself, and the world watching Kendrick Lamar walk to the ring with the belt already around his waist. That is the picture. That is the frame. That is the doctrine. Stay tuned, because the bell rings on August 28th, and hip-hop will never sound the same again.